everybody! In this video we're going to talk a little bit more about how we can kind of get random numbers in MATLAB. So far we've seen things like randi of like 3. This is going to give us a random integer between 1 and 3. But maybe I just want to pick 1 or -1, right? So I just want two options, 1 or -1. And you might think, okay, well, why can't I do something like start at -1, go up to 1, take integers? But the issue with this is that it includes 0 as an integer between -1 and 1, right? So I can run it a couple times. So I got 1, -1, 1, -1. But here we get 0. So what if I just want to do the case where I get only -1 or only 1? So I'm going to show you two different ways to do this. The first way is going to be very flexible, and you can adapt it to work for any kind of two numbers that you want to pick. So let's start by creating a new function. And let's see, I'm going to call this rand2. And let's see, I'm not going to have any input, but I'm going to have my output be r for our random number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a helper variable. I'm going to call it t. And what I'm going to do is say randi of 2. So what this does is it's either going to return 1 or it's going to return 2. Then what I'm going to say is if t is equal to 1, so remember there's two possibilities here, either t is 1 or 2, then I'm going to set r, what we return, to be -1. Else, I'm going to say r is equal to 1. I could also do else if a bunch of times, so let's say I wanted to pick between like 3 or 4 different numbers. I could have a bunch of else if statements. But else r equal to 1, let's end the if statement. And this should do it. So let's save our script, or sorry, our function. I'm going to call it rand2. And let's test it out a couple times. So let me clear the screen. And let's see. Okay, so if we run rand2, here we get -1. We run it again. -1, -1. There's 1. So another way that we can kind of test this without us having to do it a bunch of times is what if we make a script where we run it 100 times? So let's see what happens. I'm going to go to new script. And I'm going to say, okay, for I equal to 1, start at 1, go up to 100, display the result of rand2. And let's save this. I'm going to call this test_rand2. And now let's run it. Oops. Test_rand2. I just ran rand2 again. So here we can see, okay, we get a whole bunch of 1s and -1s, 1s and -1s, 1s and -1s. So let's see, we had 100 total. Let's sum up all of the times that 1 appears. So, oh, I guess here I didn't have it return a vector, so it's just being displayed. So maybe we won't do that, but we would expect it to be kind of pretty evenly split between 1s and -1s, which it looks like it is. All right, so like I mentioned, that first method was pretty flexible. We could use it to kind of get numbers other than -1 and 1. But let me show you a way that works really nicely, specifically because we're dealing with 1 and -1. So I'm going to go back to rand2, and I'm going to say save as, and I'm going to call it rand3. And now what we're going to do instead, so again, much less flexible way, but also we can do it in just one line. I'm going to say our value r is equal to -1, raise this to the power randi of 2. So remember, -1, randi of 2 is either going to be 1 or 2. If it's raised to the power of 1, we get -1. If it's raised to the power of 2, we get +1. So let's test it out. I'm going to save this first. And now let's also test it with another script. So I'm going to open the script. I'm going to save it as rand3. And here, instead of displaying, what do I want to do? I guess we can display it, that's fine. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do something else here, but I think in the next example I'll do something a little different. So let's just save it. And I'm going to run test rand 3. Oops, and I didn't save it as 3 here, that's my bad. Control S. Run it. And let's see, again, we're just going to be getting a bunch of negative 1s and 1s. So no zeros show up. This works exactly how we expected it to. So there's where we started test rand 3. Let me clear the screen for us. And now I'm going to show us something a little bit different. So what if now I want to choose between 0 and 1, so my values are going to be 0 or 1, but I want to have them weighted. So maybe I want it to be slightly more likely that we pick 0 versus 1, for instance. So I'm going to close these tabs. And what I'm going to do is create a new function. And I am going to call this, let's see, rand4. As input, I'm going to have W, this stands for weight. And for output, again, our number R. And what this is going to do is it's going to choose 0 with probability 1, or sorry, W. If it chose it with probability 1, we would have it 100% of the time. So choose 0 with probability W, and 1 with probability 1 minus W. So why did we have 1 minus W? Well, that's because W is a number between 0 and 1, and I need the probabilities to sum to 1. All right, so how do we do this? One thing I'm going to show you is a function that we haven't seen before yet. So let's go back to the command window just for a moment. If I do something like rand of 1, what this does is, okay, it returns 0.5535. I could do rand of 4. And this gives me a 4 by 4 matrix of numbers between 0 and 1. So what does rand do? What it does is you pass it a parameter, and it's going to make a n by n matrix of random numbers between 0 and 1. So for instance, if I did 2, this gives me a 2 by 2 matrix. So let's go back to our function. What I'm going to do is say, okay, let's let our value x be equal to rand of 1. And I'm going to say if x is less than or equal to our value w, so this is our weight. So like, let's say our weight is 30%. So if x is between 0 and 0.3, I'm going to say r is equal to 0, so I'm going to pick 0. Otherwise, I'm going to set r equal to 1. Let's end the if statement and save it. So this is rand4. And now what I'm going to do to test this is I'm going to write another script. So let's call it test rand4. So I'll save as test rand4. And instead of displaying, so this is where I don't want to display, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by creating an empty vector. And I'm going to say, let's have our for loop here. For I equal to 1 to, let's say, 100, v is going to be equal to v comma rand3 of, let's set our weight to be 0.78, let's say. So what this is going to do is it's going to pick 0 with about 78% or 78% of the time. So let's end. Oops, looks like I already have it ended. So let's just save it. And now let's run it. So I'm going to do test rand4. And oh, let's see what's going on. Too many input arguments. Let's see. Oops, this should be rand4, not rand3. All right. So remember, this is a script. So our variable v is in the command window. Let's take a look at what it is. So we can see here, bunch of zeros and ones, but 0 definitely shows up a lot more than 1. And remember, that's because we said 78% of the time, give me 0. But let's count how many times 0 shows up. So I'm going to say sum v equal to 0. And oh, exactly 78. So if we run it another time, it'll be different. So let's test rand 4 again and take the sum. Here we get 74, but still on par for what we would expect. So I think I'm going to end the video here. I have a lot of cats in there starting to make a lot of noise. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.